All right. Let me just get my screen share going here so that we can have a little bit of an agenda going while we're chatting. Can everyone see my my screen there that says MRC in 2023? Yep, perfect. Thank you, Sue. See a thumbs up there. All right. So we'd like to take a second to welcome everyone. We are excited to share some of the things that are going on with MRC in 2023 that we've already planned. And we'd love to always, as we always do, hear feedback going forward. If people have ideas or things that they would like to see on training or collaborations and whatnot, we will get to that a little bit later, and would love to hear input. So without further ado, for anyone that is not aware of Corinne, I don't know where you've been, but Corinne is here with us today as well. She's our director for Berkshire and Franklin County. I am Christy Lemoyne. I'm your volunteer coordinator. And like I said, we are excited to share with you some feedback that we got during the discovery session that we held remotely on January 11th. So we wanted to kind of give a little recap for anyone that wasn't able to join us, keep the rest of our members informed of what information we received and what we've done with that information. So going forward, we discussed some things that our members felt went well. We talked about how we had over 3,000 hours of service in 2022. We had volunteers that were very happy to be able to help in various roles. There's a lot of positivity around there being a sense of community. They talked about some specific events that they participated in that they enjoyed. And we talked about some of the various response groups that we have, like our disaster animal and our children's. So we also celebrated the fact that our volunteers were able to put so many hours back to the community, and how fabulous that was for our members, but also for our communities and the groups that we collaborated with. So we also discussed some challenges that we had, things that could have gone a little bit better. We talked about how we have close to 700 volunteers between the two units, but we're looking to get people more active. Not all of those volunteers are totally active, and we'll get a little further later talking about some ideas that we have for that. We talked about some challenges with clinics. I know that we have put an enormous amount of hours into clinic collaborations, and I know there were some challenges on that in terms of how volunteers felt they were utilized or other challenges. So we have a focus going forward to look at collaborating a little closer with the agencies that we do choose to collaborate with, so that we can have a better experience for our volunteers, but also for the people attending the clinics as well, because it's important to us that the community feel like it's a positive experience, as well as you guys having a positive experience. We also had some technology issues, so we're going to be focusing a little closer on the technology that we know works, that is well received by you as the unit members. We had some concern about not enough medical volunteer opportunities. We don't have an immediate remedy for this, but it's something that we can keep in mind as we brainstorm future collaborations and projects, and try and bring a focus on that as well. The final kind of big challenge that was brought up was a lack of awareness of MRC in the community. And I'll get to that a little bit more in depth later, but we're looking at trying to get some volunteers to help us with outreach, so that we can get the word out there about MRC and its goals and what it does and what it's able to do, to not only help recruit new people that might be interested in joining as members, but also get the word out there about what MRC can do for our community groups, to get us more active in terms of various projects. Next thing we talked about was ideas for the future. We wanted to give people a chance to give very open ideas that they had. We have quite a few ideas that got brought to the table that all kind of factored down to a couple of main themes, so to speak. So we had training and practice for our volunteers. And as we'll get to very shortly, we have a rather lengthy list coming up of trainings that will be coming up very shortly in the spring, and some further ideas going out towards summer that have not been fully finalized yet. We had some concerns around mental health, and there were some specific thoughts on how to get involved, but it's limited by some of the realities that we have in our unit. So we want to remind everybody that all of our projects really do have a mental health component, that, getting out in the schools and working with children, it may not be marketed directly as that, but that is always going to be a component. So we do have some plans going forward, but we just want to remind everyone that aspect is there. Let's see. We also had some, not concern, but we had some things mentioned regarding, hang on, we've got a couple people in the waiting room here. We also had some people that were bringing up the idea of feedback, which was something that we realized was not a strength for us right off the bat. So we've created some feedback forms that you will be seeing more frequently after your deployments, so that we can get feedback as an important and critical part of our post-deployment process, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then finally, there were ideas for specific projects or deployments, more collaborations, and more opportunities for medical professionals, as I mentioned before. And that goes back to some outreach ideas that we have, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So then finally, well, not finally, I'm sorry, we talked about some of the realities, kind of a reminder that while we would all love to fix the world in so many different ways, the reality is that MRC has a specific role, and we are limited by the amount of participation that we can get, the amount of coordination that Corinne and I, Carmela has come on to help us as well with some time, but we are limited by our time and our funds and our roles.
Yeah, mine's not working.
So we help as much as we can, but not everything is always something that we can fix. So we look for the opportunities where we can, and we go from there. And then finally, our goals. Our goals for 2023 was really to focus on training. We want to bring things back to training, because training really does increase our capacity to respond, because more people trained in more topics allows us to get involved in other ways. So that is where our focus is, on training, as well as trying to get some collaborations going with outside groups. All right. Oh, how did I end up? Sorry. Somehow I fell out of... Sorry, bear with me for a second here. There we go. All right. So some of the takeaways that we had from that session, like I said, we are going to put a focus on getting some feedback from you, the volunteers, from some of our organizers at some of these events. And that's all kind of a part of the MRC phases of deployment, right? So we have a pre-deployment phase where we focus on training and planning. And then we have a deployment phase, which is where you're out in the community helping at these events. And then we have a post-deployment where we kind of debrief and get feedback from them. So we're going to put that in focus a little bit more so that we can improve the experience for everyone going through into the coming year. We always want to look at recruitment, put that out there, that if anyone has any friends or family that are interested in helping their communities, we are always welcoming and looking for new members. Again, with a focus in training this year, we're hoping we might attract some more people through those various trainings that we have set up and whatever may come as we go through the year. And remind people that we have various service areas to catch your interest. We have, of course, we are a response unit first and foremost. So responding to disasters as they come. We certainly hope they don't, but we know that the reality is that in some form there will be disasters to come. We have our vaccination clinics, which I believe we don't currently have any more scheduled for the moment, but I'm sure there will be some down the road. We have teaching preparedness, which is, an important part of taking care of yourself first. We want to make sure we're passing that message along to the community members. We have our communications groups, our disaster animal groups, and some other special response areas like children's response and substance dependency, which is a newer one for us that Corinne will talk about shortly. We also want to take a moment to remind everyone, if you can, to update your profiles in mass response, because a lot of times we forget about that. We don't log our trainings. We don't update our emails or, go in and check it. And if you could just take a minute to log in and take a quick look, see if there's anything that needs updating, that would be fabulous. So it'll allow us to stay in touch with everybody a little easier. And then finally, our outreach committee that we had kind of discussed. We're looking to get some volunteers that are interested in helping us develop collaborations. So it's kind of a twofold thing. We're looking for people to help us recruit new members. Like I said, the more members that we have that are active, the more ability we have to respond in emergencies, but also to find the groups that are out there that are not aware of MRC and what it can do, so that we can connect the dots, so to speak. So Corinne, do you want to speak a little bit more on that?
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see you all. I just wanted to say what you're looking at here with the 4 Post-its and the numbers next to the Post-its, just to give you some reference here. This came from the discovery session and from a tool that Robin Yates, who facilitated the planning session, used, called Mural. It's a tool called Mural, and it's, pretty cool. And you get to move the, Post-its around and people can vote. And so what you see here is our ultimate takeaway. These were the greatest areas that volunteers who participated in those sessions were expressing interest in. Either they'd like to do more with mental health. That's where you see actually the biggest area of interest, or they're interested in participating with some outreach activities. Thought it was important to have MRC at the table for some planning sessions. We can talk about that. We don't currently have a list of opportunities with dates for you, but it's possible that in the future, we may say, well, we have a volunteer opportunity for someone to represent MRC on the opioid planning coalition meetings that meet monthly in Berkshire, something like that, or the emergency planning committees, which we have 1 in Franklin and 3 in Berkshire on rolling schedules. So that's what that means, the MRC at the table. People thought that was important. And then, training. And so just to give you some background to what you're looking at now. What am I talking about? I think we were going to talk about the
outreach.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, we've got many health departments in Berkshire and many health departments in Franklin. And ideally, we can carry out some important reminder activities for all of them. Do they all know about MRC? Probably. Do they forget about us when there's something we could be doing to support them? Absolutely. So it's this stay top of mind. So what we'd like to do is invite you to be part of this outreach initiative where we, have the emails to the boards of health. We'll give you some materials to use to outreach to them. So that would be one volunteer opportunity. More outreach. Christy mentioned like collaborations. So everything we do basically throughout the year, even when we're responding to a disaster, we're obviously then collaborating with other response partners. But what are activities that we, through which we endeavor to offer you rewarding service options, all involve collaborations. So like the food delivery options, either in Franklin, it's a partnership with LifePath, the senior serving organization that is most prominent. In Berkshire, it's the community health programs where we're doing food delivery for people in their nutrition club. So that was a great collaboration. Right now with the new program in Berkshire, and I know Christy has an agenda, so I don't want to go, to speak about that ahead of my time, but just to say that, in order to do this work, we're collaborating with organizations that already serve individuals with substance use disorders. And the collaborations are really very important in just increasing awareness of the Medical Reserve Corps to important stakeholders. So, and not only that, but, when we do outreach to a board of health, or we're collaborating with with like the Breen Center in Berkshire County, or a senior center in Franklin County, these are all sources for potential volunteers as well. So it's just all, the overarching goal is all about building capacity within the MRC, both in terms of how many volunteers we have and also the different ways that we can respond. But importantly, we build this capacity so that we're able to meet the needs of our communities. So the more capacity we have, the greater impact that we can have. The outreach to the boards of health and to other organizations like that is because these are the folks that may have something happening where they can put in a request for volunteers. And so that's the way that we are able to offer volunteer opportunities when the community requests us. This is aside from the special projects that we do that are grant funded. And so Christy, have I addressed what you
I
want
think so.
And
Just
then,
if anyone has any questions and you want to unmute and ask them, you are welcome to, or you can put them in the chat. Not immediately seeing anything, but we can always come back and answer that if somebody's typing something in. So thank you, Gren.
You're welcome. I'll just say a little bit also while I'm looking at these Post-its on the more with mental health. Of course, it's such a pressing need everywhere, exacerbated by COVID. We're seeing it with the kids in the schools. We're seeing it, in our own lives, perhaps, in terms of like added stress. There are some people that believe that everyone has vicarious PTSD because of COVID. And, as we move farther away from that, new ways that issue will be impacting communities in the long term sort of emerge. But the more with mental health, that's, I guess, where it came from, the motivation to do service to help this issue. And so what I just want to point out is that, and Christy had touched on this, really there isn't a service opportunity that we can offer right now that doesn't connect with this issue. So the work we're doing with the substance use disorders right now, the art programming that we've been offering to vulnerable populations, even the food delivery, these all are connected to the issue of mental health. And so if this is a service area that is important to you, I would urge you to take a look at the opportunities that are there to volunteer, and know that in a sense, sometimes more clearly than others, we are working to improve the problem of mental health challenges, various levels thereof, in our communities.
Fabulous. So that was all of the big takeaways that we took from our discovery session back in January. Going with that, we wanted to talk about some of the trainings and projects, some of which were already in the works, some of which we took some inspiration from the feedback that we got on that. And again, as I said before, we train so that we have more options to respond, that people feel more confident as they're responding. And of course, training is a big draw for a lot of our members. I know when I came on board as a volunteer, that was part of what drew me to the organization. And we want to make sure that we're keeping that up as one of our goals. So over the past year, we have had several fabulous trainings. There will be a link towards the end of the slide where you can go on and watch some of them that have been recorded. We ask that if you choose to go back and do that, because they are some really good trainings, that you make sure to log it as well in your mass response profile, so that we know that you have watched this training, and that's one more tool in your tool belt as you go out to volunteer. So some of those include some conflict resolution. I believe we had 2 sessions on conflict resolution. And de-escalation. I'm sorry, it covered both topics. We had an introduction to sheltering, where we talked about some of the various roles. And then we looked a little further at a little more in depth about sheltering as a whole, talked a little more about scenarios and whatnot, sort of things to expect if you were volunteering in a shelter. We had an introduction to disaster animal response, to introduce new members to the DART program, some of the DART supplies. It was a very hands-on program. We also had a pet tech first aid available for anyone that wanted to learn basically first aid CPR type techniques for animals. And then we had our first response training, which looked at trauma focused mainly towards children. Ways to use movement to address trauma and traumatic responses. But honestly, it applied to adults as well, as we discussed at that training. So that was some of the things that we've had in the past year. Again, some of those, not all, are available in a recorded fashion for anyone that was not able to attend. But upcoming, we have some fabulous trainings that we've already set up for this spring, and it's just the beginning of what we're planning. So jumping right off, we have a CPR class in Franklin County scheduled for March 11th. I believe there's still a few seats open for that, but there's also a wait list. So if you are interested, please let us know and we could set up additional classes. That's just the first one that we got all set up. We will have one in Berkshire County as well. We are finalizing the location this week, but that will be on April 15th. So look for that if you are interested in renewing your CPR. Those are both going to be community level. So if you have a medical license, it may not meet the qualifications for a medical CPR class, but for average community level, it will get you certified or recertified, as the case may be. We have a virtual Narcan training scheduled for March 6th. That link went out not too long ago. I can provide that if anyone else is interested. But we will be working on setting up some in-person in northern, central, and southern Berkshire for anyone that is interested in attending in person. We're working on getting some free Narcan handed out for the in-person classes. And I'm going to see what we can do about anyone that attends virtually. If you're interested in getting access to Narcan, we may be able to set up being able to pick that up from one of the offices as well. But that is open to anyone interested. They'll do a little bit of information about identifying overdoses, about options with Berkshire harm reduction here in the Berkshires, and how to identify and help with overdoses. We also have psychological first aid, which was previously a requirement for MRC volunteers. I believe that got waived around COVID, but we strongly encourage anyone that has not taken the class to do so. That is an absolutely fabulous class with a very passionate trainer coming up. And that's going to be held on April 29th and 30th. One day will be in Berkshire County and one day will be in Franklin. Like I said, with the other training, we're just finalizing the location as to which day is in which county. But that'll be a morning and afternoon session that covers kind of the basics of psychological first aid and then gets into a little more scenario practice based so that you feel comfortable with the topics discussed and able to put those into play. And then we have Dr. Ruth Pody. I don't know if everyone is familiar with her, but she is a very passionate speaker, local expert in substance abuse and dependency. And we are just finalizing talks with her to have her speak in a virtual forum on May 4th in the evening to speak about some of the local, local concerns and local aspects of substance dependency. So that is what we have currently lined up. We are looking into some additional options, possibly some unconscious bias training or some team building, and we are trying to see if we can orchestrate some pediatric first aid, psychological first aid. So more child-based versions of the one that is currently scheduled. But we don't have details on that. That's just kind of something in the works. So that is what we have for upcoming trainings currently. And then in terms of projects, we have some of our ongoing projects or deployments. We have our farm to home project in collaboration with LifePath in Franklin County and food deliveries to vulnerable populations in Berkshire County. We have the Arts and Health program that Corinne had mentioned earlier, which is really kind of ramping up. I think we have 3 or 4 different locations that we've gone to at this point. Corinne could speak a little more to that, but and we have some of our other projects like, potential vaccination clinics and COVID testing, which have settled a little bit for the moment, but, may always come back based on community need. We have some additional projects that we're aware of that'll need some volunteers to help staff in the spring. And we're looking to ramp up some of our response team special response areas, I should say. So disaster animal communications, children's response. We're going to be looking towards getting some activity with those groups in spring to summer as well. And then we have some new projects on the horizon. Corinne, you want to talk a little bit more about the podcast theater?
Yes. The new projects I will talk about. I just wanted to mention that when we do special projects and we roll out new programs, that these are all grant funded initiatives. I think, Christy, do we have a place later in the discussion where I'm on to talk about grants? Okay, so I'm trying not to mix things up here, but any new projects that we roll out are grant related, and so just as an example, when we did testing in the schools in Franklin County last year, that was a grant funded project, and actually we're submitting an application for a recognition award for that initiative, and so Christy's working on that application right now. So we would hope to have another award, another recognition award for Franklin County, and we've got an application in for Berkshire as well. So the arts and health program that we started last year, where we were with nurses and healthcare staff in Fairview Hospital, because our healthcare staff are so still like over there's staff shortages. People are working more. It's stressful to begin with. So we consider healthcare staff a vulnerable population in a way, certainly a population that can benefit from from creative engagement activities based on what we know about how it improves our well-being, reduces stress, things like that. We were also in senior centers and in the Breen Center, which serves people with substance use dependency. So that program that was rolled out last year was also a grant funded project. So just so that when we roll things out formally like that, it's usually a grant situation. We've applied competitively, and we've been awarded a grant for that. So this year, the two new projects that we've rolled out are in Berkshire. We're already doing the creative engagement with the substance use disorders agencies, because we're bringing art programming to individuals in the intensive outpatient program at the Breen Center. But as Chrissy mentioned, we're now expanding that. We're now having more of a focus on that particular vulnerable population, and we're going to be collaborating with two additional organizations in addition to the Breen Center. In addition to the creative engagement, though, it's really a project that encompasses all kinds of alternative wellness strategies. So we wanted to keep the art in there because that's a program that's going so well, and it is an alternative modality for healing. Healing arts, massage, Reiki, acupuncture, writing. Janet was on the program earlier today. She had to hop off. Today she did a writing workshop at Breen Center. So and then the patients will then possibly incorporate the writing exercises into some of the art that they do. So pet therapy, we've got a canine support team in Berkshire. I think we have about 11 currently dog handlers with certified therapy dogs, and now we've got 2 in Franklin County as well. So bringing animals into a situation where people who are recovering from addiction is something that's considered a way to sort of boost their certainly their moods, right? And when your mood is better, your body's able to heal better. What's been really neat about this idea of bringing these alternative wellness strategies to this population is because it gives folks who are trying to recover an experience of some other way, some healthy way that they can feel good other than their addiction. So that's been really well received so far, and we're hoping to recruit more folks from the community who both have long-term recovery who would like to be included in this project, and also who are practitioners of a wellness modality. In Franklin County, the podcast, we're the first ones to be doing an MRC podcast. And so we're just developing this. Denise is on the call. She's helping to spearhead it. And she was also the team lead for the oral history projects, which were great. We've got some folks on the call also here today who were interviewed for the oral history projects. Those oral histories are also being used sort of as a springboard for an interactive performative workshop series that Carmela is directing. I think some of you may remember that Carmela has a background in theater, so this is really right up her alley. So these are two, the podcast and the performative workshops are two new programs that we're rolling out, grant funded, and they are both serving the same purpose of creatively reaching more members of the community to increase awareness about MRC and build capacity of the unit. And so Carmela will be joining the call tonight to speak in more detail about the performative workshops. But so those are the new projects that we have going on right now. And in the chat, if everyone's reading it, Sue Keller mentioned something about another way that MRC might be involved in supporting the community's efforts to positively impact mental health. And so, these are great ideas, and certainly something like what Sue is mentioning, which is to maybe get MRC set up as some kind of a referral source, or at least to be able to refer. I'll find out more about what Sue has in mind, but something like this is it sounds like something that we could I just read it briefly, but something that we could certainly compile a referral list or other resources which we can add to our website. As a reminder, you can get information about our new projects and our trainings and our training requirements and all the training links, all of that on the website. And we'd encourage you to consider that website a resource.
Absolutely. And then one additional project coming on the horizon will be our children's response kits, which I know we have done in the past. Corinne is more familiar with them than I am, but that will be another project that will be coming up. We'll need some assistance assembling them and possibly getting them out to various groups.
And I'll tell you what those consisted of. We did a training a couple of years back with the Children's Response Group, which is a nonprofit that's connected with the Church of the Brethren. Nationally, what they do is they go into disaster settings. Their volunteers are trained to work with the kids with a selection of play items that are designed to help kids work through, unbeknownst to themselves, work through any trauma from, having any kind of trauma that they experience. And, if we go into an emergency shelter situation because families have been evacuated, that is a container, in which we may have the opportunity to work with the kids, not formally as any kind of a child therapist, but, just these play items help them express themselves. And in expressing themselves, they can improve their well-being. Church of the Brethren, they did have a suggested list. They shared it with us, and we were able to purchase enough materials to create what we called MRC Kids Kits. And we did this during COVID. So just a few volunteers were involved. We were masked. We were in safe settings to sort the supplies and put them into bags. And because we didn't want to store them and until an emergency happens that we hope never happens. We decided to use the bags to form collaborations with community organizations that were already serving kids on a daily basis, COVID or not, who have experienced trauma. So domestic violence organizations with children's programs, the fostering network in Berkshire, and we took the kits and we gave them to these organizations. So it helped children it helped children, helped mental health, helped us build collaborations, which built stakeholder awareness of MRC. So everything we do, we always try to just keep our eye on that overarching goal of building capacity and doing more good in the community. So we will be making some more kits, and we'd love for you to be involved in that. And I think we can either continue to, collaborate with the organizations that we gave them to before. The feedback was incredible. The staff were so grateful and really talked about how much good that, that they did and how wonderful it was that they had them to provide. Or we can create new relationships. Maybe save a few of them for if a shelter opens, since it's still winter, and apparently tomorrow it's really going to look like winter again. And winter is the time that we would more likely end up in a sheltering situation.
Perfect. I think that was everything in terms of training and projects. Corinne already touched on grants that we have received and will be putting into place for the coming year. Is there anything else you want to add on that?
Well, all the trainings that Christy mentioned are all grant funded trainings. So every time we get a grant, we've got deliverables that we need to fulfill. And so, in making those grant proposals, we say we're going to do, trainings for, substance use dependence, and bring Dr. Ruth Pody, or we're going to cover the cost of 50 volunteers to get their CPR certification, the psychological first aid, the programs that I mentioned before that were grant funded, the school testing and arts and health last year, the podcast and performative workshop / play. Ultimately, we hope it would actually be a play, and the healing arts for substance use dependent population. Those are all as a result of an annual grant, a smaller grant that we get. It's $10,000 for each county. And but in case you weren't aware, because of COVID, we did this past year have an incredible opportunity for larger grants than we will ever likely have the opportunity to apply for and receive again. And we actually received over $100,000 for each county. And all of these funds need to be expended by June. And so we're getting supplies where that makes sense. This is where the items for the kits will come from. This is where art supplies come from for continuing that program into the future. But the big thing is it's an opportunity to offer so many of these trainings. If you have ideas for new trainings, or you've attended a training, or you've heard a training that's really good and really powerful, please let us know, because now is the time that that we'll be able to offer it. And it's why we're able to offer so many trainings right now. The trainings we always try to offer so that they'll be useful not only in building capacity of MRC, but also in our own daily lives. When we learn psychological first aid, we're able to support our own friends who may be having a challenge in their life. If you're a teacher and we're we're offering pediatric psychological first aid. Well, maybe you'll be able to use that skill somehow to help a student who's troubled. We always try the conflict resolution. Once in a while we have a need for stuff like that in our own lives. So we always try to make the trainings very useful. So I wanted to just mention that we are busy with these new grants. It is why we're able to buy some things right now and also offer the trainings. And the things that we're buying are not just the art supplies and the contents for the kids' kits. We are getting like, PPE, replenishing our supplies of protective equipment that we used during COVID. Tents, we got tents, we're getting new banners. We're able to do an awful lot of outreach right now. Recruitment, we had some billboards in Berkshire County. We've got some billboards going up in Franklin County. We've got newspaper ads. You may have seen our new ad for Franklin. And so again, really wonderful opportunity for us as a result of these funds. And then, come June, we won't be able to spend so freely. Corey says this confirms her understanding of something. Let's see. Yeah.
She was asking about the CHP program, the changes that occurred on that.
Okay. Does anyone would anybody like to unmute and ask questions about the grants or share about anything you've heard so far? And Christy, maybe when we get to the, because I see you have another slide left, when we get to the end, maybe we can just come off of screen share and have a conversation if anybody has anything they'd like to say or share.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where we are. We mentioned the website as a resource, wanted to provide that to you. And then off of that website are some little further links to training. I had mentioned a lot of those trainings that we've had previously and have upcoming will be recorded. So those will be on the training section. If you have missed any of the newsletters, we know that sometimes for some reason they end up in a spam folder or you don't quite see them. You can always catch up on previous meetings and newsletters. It's the link there. And then, there's always new volunteer opportunities. We've mentioned some on this call. We talked about, press releases, marketing, outreach type situations, procurement of supplies. Corinne is looking for some help with that, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage everyone to participate in the trainings that are upcoming, as well as going back and looking at ones that you may not have been able to join us for live. And, looking at our areas of service, some of our special response, if it catches your interest and you need more information, get in touch with us and we can certainly help guide you towards how to get involved with those. And then remembering that we are first and foremost a preparedness organization and that, we are a responsive group. We like to find other things to do with our time because, of course, we don't always want to have to be responding to things. But, the potential is always there for some sort of a response that we can't anticipate today. So I am happy to end that screen share there. If anyone has questions, I saw that there was a comment from Sue about a oral health program idea, which is a fabulous idea that we could certainly look into. Is there anyone else that wants to come off mute? Just raise your hand if you could. I see Sheila's raising her actual hand.
Sue has her hand up too.
I just wanted to.
Sue, you want to talk?
Well, just about the training in general, I think it'd be super helpful since you definitely have goals and priorities for what you want us to be trained on. If you could create just a checklist or a spreadsheet that says, here are the top, we want you guys all to train on this by June 1st. And then here are some other ones. Like it would be helpful to know, like have a check sheet of what you really want us training on.
Sure.
Otherwise it's like, oh, there's hundreds of trainings available, go do some. And that's not quite as action oriented as actually saying, hey, here's 5 specific ones we think would be super helpful. Or if you're in a medical track, take these. If you're in a public health track, take these. Just so we know that we can be better prepared for whatever's coming up.
that is a fabulous idea. We could certainly put in a little more of a focus on which trainings we feel are the most beneficial.
And with some of them, Sue, and I agree, that's a great idea. With some of the trainings, they're connected to, like, if you wanted to do the arts and health program, there was a 5 sessions of trainings that we did with Creative Center. So, you know, a lot of it depends on what is your interest, because we, like we said, want to hear from you if you have ideas of trainings you would like to take too. Everyone who's on this call today has completed the required trainings to be an MRC volunteer. So those were the, you know, MRC orientation, the ICS Incident Command System and Public Health. I mean, beyond those requirements, gosh, we, you know, welcome you to take all the trainings, and just remember that a lot of them are according to, you know, what interests you as a volunteer.
That's too overwhelming.
Yeah. We'll
I
take
need
some out.
a little bit more focus, a little bit more.
Yeah.
focus.
I will work on creating a document that looks at, you know, areas of interest and the top trainings for each of those, but also overall general trainings that we feel would benefit MRC members as a whole.
That'd be super helpful.
I might also add to, if you're going to make those separate lists or suggestions based on grouping, that a contact person also be included. You know, if you do certain trainings, who do you connect yourself to after that?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Corey.
And just to plug, the instructions for updating your training record on Mass Response are located on the training page of the website.
I think one of you mentioned there was at least one training that was waived during the pandemic that must have been, you know, an important training that some of us may not have gotten if we joined.
You're absolutely right about that. And Naomi, that is the psychological first aid training. Yeah, that's a very good point. So we'll make a note of that on the document that that Christy will create, and we'll remind everyone actually when we send out for the registration on that this was the once required course. You know, it's interesting, and I don't know if you're aware, and even within Western Mass alone, different units, because the units are autonomous, even though we've got similar missions, different units have different requirements. And so even during COVID, we were requiring a couple of trainings plus your administrative documentation, your, you know, Corey forms and, you know, licenses where those were required. And other units were doing a Corey check and that was it. You were deployment ready according to them. So we like to follow the guidance from the National Deployment Readiness Guide. And I think that, you know, the more trained our volunteers are, the more we can interest parties in the community that have the authority to request our help. So, you know, that's our take on it. And we, you know, we continue to require the trainings, but that was a really great memory that you had, and a good point that we'll include when we send out that reminder. And we're really excited to, we're hoping to actually video those trainings, even though they're in-person trainings. We've got a couple of videographers in our Medical Reserve Corps in Berkshire, and also this is connected to the podcast and the performative workshops. We've just become members of the Southern Berkshire Community Television and the community TV in Franklin County. And one of the benefits, if you're not aware, I wasn't, is that we now get to be trained on the use of video equipment, and we're able to borrow that equipment. And so even if it means, you know, one of our volunteers is present at that training and trains on the equipment, we're trying to get that recorded so that we can, again, possibly require the training. The only required psychological first aid training that was available online was a 6-hour training. And so, you know, during COVID, when everybody was in a hurry and when help was so needed, that's why we waived it. So it'd be great to have this one recorded and we can use it. It's very MRC relevant and it's less than 6 hours.
Sheila, go ahead. Thank you for your patience.
Sure. Thank you. I apologize. I do have to run as well, but in Franklin County, the Emergency Preparedness Network, coordinated through the FERCOG, Regional Council of Governments, did their COVID after action report. And one of the strengths was the fact that MRC has the list, basically, of volunteers that really should be called upon in emergencies. And one of the corrective action reports written right in their document is to use MRC to support recruitment and training. And they want to work with MRC. I'm reading right from their report, work with MRC to boost recruitment, generate more opportunities for volunteer engagement. MRC needs to have someone at the table as a member of that Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coalition. And, we need to reach out and get somebody to sit on that and keep using this while we have this money right now to make sure that our list of volunteers is very robust and does all the things that we've been just talking about how to cross-identify what strengths and weaknesses people have and what training they need, what they've been trained in, et cetera, et cetera. This is the time to do it because MRC is not the only organization that is looking at that, and this group recognizes that MRC is the resource for volunteers. The group I'm speaking of, the Franklin County Emergency Preparedness Coalition, used to be called MAFCO, the Mohawk Area Public Health Coalition. And MAFCO is comprised of all of the boards of health in Franklin County. So again, you need to, that's where we're going to connect with these people. And so we really need to jump on it and get somebody on that as a member of that coalition. They meet every other Monday. And,
do they meet virtually, Sheila?
That I don't know how they're meeting right now, but they had been meeting virtually. I have a feeling they might be meeting back in person at this point. I don't know. But this is one place where we really need to work on. And I was very happy to see that they recognize MRC's strengths here.
Absolutely.
I know you're a really great advocate for MRC and MRC volunteers. So thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I have to leave. I've got my 4-H group, so I have to go right now. Apologize.
No worries.
Good to see everybody.
Take care.
Does anyone else have any thoughts, suggestions, questions? Penny, go ahead.
This is kind of related. I'm on the Shelburne Emergency Management Committee, and we've been talking about recruiting volunteers, and I've talked about MRC and, working, to get more people involved in MRC and coordinate with MRC on any planning that we're doing. But our police chief a couple of months ago started talking about CERT, and that's how I got involved in the first place. And I thought that MRC kind of replaced CERT. So I was kind of baffled when he brought that up. And I was wondering, does CERT still exist? I mean, is that, or I was just confused.
I can speak to that. In Franklin County, for as long as I've been with MRC, and that's about 15 years, Franklin County used to be a joint MRC, CERT, and disaster animal response.
Okay.
So in 2018, when Franklin sort of relinquished the those three organizations, they had to find a new housing organization. That's when Berkshire sort of took it over. So CERT does not exist in Franklin County as a county-wide unit.
Okay.
So each town could form their own CERT. CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, for anybody who's not familiar with CERT, our missions are similar, but CERT has a very robust slate of required trainings. The first of which is really informative. it's emergency preparedness, just like we have, but theirs takes it a lot more in depth, like how to outfit your house so that you're able to, escape your house if you need to, where your gas turn off switch is. Really, really excellent training. And I believe they have an animals and disaster component too. But so in Franklin County, at least on a countywide, CERT does not exist. And in Berkshire County, I believe CERT does continue to exist. And my understanding is that it's a small and inactive currently group.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Yeah. But it's a natural partnership because we're all, wanting to respond when there's a need.
I was just wondering, is it like duplication of efforts though? I mean, if we're looking for volunteers, why not just get people involved in MRC now in Franklin County and, and work that way?
Yeah. And that's why we've got the articles going out. We've got the billboards. We're working on that. The other thing, the difference between, and there was a really good document that compared the MRC versus CERT, is that while we do have the same goals, the MRC is public health oriented.
Okay.
And CERT is more emergency response oriented in the sense that they are funded through MEMA and FEMA, the emergency management agencies, and we are funded through DPH and the
ASPR.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
The Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Readiness.
If you're going to duplicate efforts and duplicate resources, I mean, this would be a good area in which to do it. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Tricia says, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a quick thing about funding that could be available. It's good to see people's faces without masks on, because I remember everybody from the COVID clinics. The funding, you should be able to, just FYI, get some funding through FEMA as well, because what you do is basically resilience work, community capacity building. And I know that that's one of the fundamental tenets of what FEMA is out there to do. So if you need some, I'm not good at all at finding grants, but I can help you understand the resilience aspects of that sort of thing. Anything to do with resilience, just shoot me up an email or call me.
Thank you, Tricia.
You're welcome.
And remind me and tell the group, what is the, because I know you've done some really excellent work in this arena.
Thank you.
And you've earned some credentials and some qualifications. Can you tell us about that?
I did. Thank you. Oh, I just got my master's and MS degree in security and resilience studies from Northeastern. And what I focused on was community resilience in the aftermath, specifically of mass shootings, which hopefully we will never experience in Massachusetts. However, the same lessons you can learn from how communities respond to that can be translated into any number of other situations. So in terms of building capacity at the community level, that is always the number one way to help a community bounce back from any kind of shock. So whatever we can do to increase the networks that we have across communities, within our communities, and then also up to people in roles of government or policy, that's exactly what we want to do, because it like builds a really excellent framework, a fabric of our community that also becomes stronger as you build more and more layers. In terms of social capacity and networking with other people.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do we have any other comments or questions? No. All right. I think that's everything for right now. Then I
Thank
hope.
you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. We appreciate everyone was able to join us, and hopefully you've heard some things that excite you going into the next year that we have coming up on us, and hopefully there's some projects that catch your interest to get involved with.
And I looked at Denise. Hello, Denise. Good to see you. And I remembered something that I neglected to mention, which is that because Denise is spearheading the podcast initiative, that as we get more details about what that's going to look like specifically, we will share them with you. And right now we're trying to, formulate the first few podcast episodes. So topics, speakers, stuff like that. So if you have ideas about that, and I know we've heard from some of you already, that's what we're working on, and you'll get more information about that as we go.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon and are prepared for the storm coming our way later this evening. Maybe.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
You.